everybody, and welcome back to the Star Wars Expanded Universe, narrated by Disney, or Lucasfilm, whichever way you slice it, Legends. Today is a very Han Solo-centric day, as you can tell by the title of the video, but it's not just that book. I have many things to discuss today. Now, if you're a weirdo like me and you like to do things explicit, very extreme chronological order, then you would read like the first 160th pages of Rebel Dawn of the Han Solo trilogy by A.C. Crispin, up until she starts referencing the Brian Dailey books. And they're very overt when she's doing it. It's even a different font. So when you see that, go on and skip over to the Han Solo book. Well, so some of these other things as well. Also within that Rebel Dawn book, before we get to the Brian Dailey references, it talks about a 5-month jump before those Brian Dailey references, which is where some of these stories might fit in, and which in that would be within those 5-month time span. Starting with Star Wars Adventures, Han Solo and the Hollow Moon of Koyara. I don't know how to say that. It's just a little comic with Han Solo and Chewie doing a normal smuggling operation, and Han Solo is reunited with an old friend. Basically, it references Garrus Shrike from the A.C. Crispin book Paradise Snare, the guy that helped raise Han. He was another one of those kids that Garrus had stolen and, kind of had used him to, like, get more money from people that felt bad for children and stuff. And so he's another one of those guys and reunites with him. So it's a whole little adventure, and by the end of it, they leave the guy stranded on the planet of Hoojibs from the Marvel comics. So that's kind of cool. It's a decent little thing. It's nothing fantastic. It's nothing great. But it is a fun little tale that I think is a little bit more obscure. I tried looking it for anywhere on Amazon Kindle. I can't find it. If you do, please let me know. I want it on digital. But you can get it for about $10 on Amazon if you just want to own the thing. Up next, we have from Free Comic Book Day, but it is collected in many different collections. It's in my Epic Collection Volume 4, The Empire, with Boba Fett on the cover. And that is The Art of a Bad Deal. So this, Han and Chewie are trying to deliver this shipment to this alien race. These aliens try to betray them by hiding like the secret compartments on the Falcon and stuff. And Chewie and him quickly dispatch them and send them away. It's a little tiny Star Wars thing, but it's a fun little Star Wars thing. I think it's a lot of fun. Now, here's some things you absolutely don't need, especially to pay for, because that's going to be expensive. But if you're really curious about these things, you can go to Joe Bongiorno's website, StarWarsTimeline.net, where you can download as PDFs all the source books for the different things like, Truce of Bakura or Shadows of the Empire. So for Shadows of the Empire, we have all the extras. So here's the thing about these stories within the source books. They're literally, the longest you're going to get is a page. The shortest is like a couple paragraphs of story. It's not much, not something you need. I just want to talk about it here. Also, another thing that you might want to download from Joe Bongiorno's website, StarWarsTimeline.net, is Galaxy Guide number 10, Bounty Hunters, with Guild Justice and the other side of the story. Both stories really short, again, just a couple paragraphs. I really don't want to tell you anything about them because they're so short. Like, these are shorter than short stories. Like, at most, again, you get a page. That's it. That's all you have. So, I do not recommend paying all the money that you need for all this stuff, but I would say, unless you're an avid collector, but go on Joe Bongiorno's website, download them as PDFs on your computer, have some fun. But Guild Justice and the other side of the story, that would be next chronologically. Then we jump to a Ryder Winham trilogy that was written during the prequel era, because it's got prequel era advertisements like for TCW on the back of it. But we have adventures in hyperspace with Han and Chewie just going on a couple missions for Jabba, which is why I said this might fit within that 5-month time jump they do. But this was written in like 2009, so this is a lot later. But they're a lot of fun, and I don't have too much to say because they're really short and I don't want to spoil it. But in the first one, called Fire Ring Race, Han and Chewie do this job for Jabba. They go to this place where they have to kind of like do a whole bunch of stuff. It's really hard to talk about it because it's so short, and I don't want to. Because if I tell you anything, I'm kind of spoiling most of the story. It's really short. Just believe me when I tell you, it's a lot of fun. The second one, Shin Showdown. They do another mission for Jabba. There's one of those guys from the Mos Eisley's Cantina who tries to betray Jabba, and so Han Solo has to stick it to him. And then there's the big switch as the finale to the adventures in hyperspace. This was also a lot of fun. This had an Imperial guy that Han and Chewie had to, avoid. They were trying to get this ancient Hutt statue to Jabba because he wanted it. But the Imperial does not like the Hutts and does not like anyone associated with the Hutts, so he tries to do everything in his power to make sure that it doesn't go to Jabba, thereby interfering with Han and Chewie's work. But all three of these stories are really short. You could probably read them in a day, but they are so much fun. Ryder Winham, again, knocks out the park. I didn't know what these things were. I just knew they existed because I watched Matt Wilkins' videos, and then I read them for myself. I was like, these are so fun. And time flew by reading them. So I definitely recommend those if you can find them. And then, to the title of the video today, Brian Dailey's first book in his trilogy, Han Solo at Star's End. This is great. Everything about this. Han Solo, just like with L. Neil Smith, with Lando in the Lando trilogy, everything that Han Solo says feels like something Han Solo would say in episode 4. And I love that. This is a hardened Han Solo. He's a lot more like how he's going to be in episode 4. And yet, there's still instances of the A.C. Crispin Han Solo strapped in, where it's a facade. And I loved it. I loved this story. I loved the corporate sector as like an idea. It's like this part of space. They made a deal. Like they pay a lot of taxes on the Empire to essentially like leave them alone. Like the Empire's around, and they basically go, yeah, if you don't pay us enough, we will start bothering you. But as long as they're paying their just dues, they relatively leave them alone. But it's like this whole sector of space controlled by a bunch of companies, like Cyberpunk, but in space, which is because Cyberpunk is usually like a bunch of corporations in control of like the police and everything. But this is a corporation in charge of all the military and police and everything within that sector because they are the reigning people in charge. And I love that. It's a way to have Han face enemies that aren't the Empire before that be like all he does. So that was nice. We get introduced to, again, one of the greatest freaking droids in all of existence, and I mean droids as in two, when we have Bullocks and Blue Max, the best duo ever. I love them so much, and rereading this only helped reinvigorate that fact. I love them. They're so much fun. I love them. They're so good. Everything about them. I imagine that when like Blue Max talks, because it says he kind of has like a childish voice. He's like, "Hey Han, what can I do for you today?" And then Bullocks is kind of like a bit more quiet. I'm thinking a little bit more like Eeyore because he's an older droid, and just like juxtaposition between the two, I love it. I dig it so much. And by the end of the book, right, like the corporate sector boss guy, he's holding this event or whatever, and his entertainment is delayed. Like, they can't make it. So they're going to get a replacement that's closer. And Han's like, this is perfect. This is what we need to get into this place so we can go save the people we need to save. We'll just pretend to be the replacement. And it's so good. I love that Han seems to be a jerk when clearly that's not the case. Because the thing is with the A.C. Crispin trilogy, my only issue is that you always know what Han's really thinking. To the extent you do in this book too. But he's very much more sympathetic and clearly a nice guy underneath in the A.C. Crispin books, whereas he just straight out seems like the character you know from the movies, or at least from 4 and 5, or just 4, in the Brian Dailey trilogy, which is why I can understand why people might like the Brian Dailey trilogy more, because he's like, that is episode 4 Han put in a book, whereas the other books are more like expanding upon his character. But again, just an absolute pleasure to reread. I loved this little story here. You know, we get to meet Doc and Zala, not Zala, sorry, Jessa. And of course, Han does the woohoos by the end of the book because he's Han Solo. And I also love just the fact that, you know, they got to keep going on jobs because the Millennium Falcon, as cool as it is also kind of a piece of junk. And they know it, but they love it. And it constantly, you know, has issues and stuff that they got to repair. But it's his baby. It's his pride and joy that he won from Lando. So he must keep using it. But yeah, and then also there's a part where Chewie gets kidnapped, or not kidnapped, but he gets taken away. And of course we know he's going to get out because he's in episode 4, but it's the way Han gets so emotional. He's like, no, we must save him. When he's all about umero uno, except for when it comes to Chewie. And those of you who know the legacy of the Star Wars Expanded Universe, it's a bit harder with how hard he takes it now, seeing as what happens way down the line. But yeah, overall, all these stories are a lot of fun, and I do recommend pretty much all of them. Absolutely think it's worth your time. But I'll see you next time, guys, where we discuss a couple short stories and the Agents of the Empire comic run, or Agent of the Empire comic run by John Ostrander, which I know almost nothing about. Until then, guys, may the Force be with you.